So hi everybody, as I said, I'm Anne Kearns and I work in the Co-Centre for Climate, Biodiversity and Water. Next to me is Professor Vaughan Buckley, who's one of the co-directors of the Co-Centre. Next to her is Dr. John Darcy, who is in Queen's. I'm going to get this wrong as we're going because people have moved affiliations and I don't think it's my fault, but I will get confused. Next we have Professor Lawrence Gill, who's in Trinity.
Yep.
Yeah. He brought his own cheer crowd.
All my fan club.
Then we have Dr. John Talty. Yes? Jack, obviously, sorry. And then we have Fergus McAuliffe, who was what I do in ICRAG back in the day, but now we took him to the dark side in Trinity. And I don't think he used to be proud very happy about it. So as I tried to say in the caves, we had one new piece of music that was commissioned specifically for the event, and then there was a couple of pieces of music that had been created for other events and other pieces. And I suppose they were all created slightly differently. So I'm actually going to start with Lawrence and Fergus, if he can tell us how Inception Horizon came about and why, and then what it felt like to work around a geomorphological concept in music. And now Lawrence cheats because he does both, but what it meant to communicate it to other people as well.
Yeah, so I suppose Inception Horizon, so at work, academic work, I do a lot of research into how water moves through these type of limestone karst environments. So we spend a lot of time in the field, down underground in the caves, measuring flows, trying to work out which way they're going, how the pollutants move. And then we translate this into models, mathematical models, and then we use these to make predictions about the future. What will happen under climate change? Will it flood more? Will it be less water? And all that type of thing. Which I find very interesting, but I know it's quite kind of esoteric, I think, to a lot of people, even just the concept of groundwater, water under the ground and how it moves. I give a lot of lectures in Trinity College, and I'm well aware that from the minute people walk out of the room, they don't remember 95% of what I've said. But I also, I play quite a lot of music in my spare time, and I've always been struck that you can hear a piece of music that you heard back in the 1970s, when you were young, or when I was young, and straight away you remember the lyrics. Just 40 years later, somehow you have it. So there's something about music. For some people's brains, I think something about music that links into your memory. And so I've always had this interest in how can we link music into some of these scientific concepts to sort of broaden the public perception of things that I think are important. So water moving under the ground is one of those. And so I've also sing in the amazing Mellotonics choir, and so I had this idea about could we somehow have some piece of music that mimicked how the rain falls onto the land, how it percolates through the soil, gets down into the rocks, and all kind of combines together in these underground channels that we've seen today. And luckily, Nora is this kind of creative genius, so I explained the concept to her. She got very excited about it, and I kind of explained the different pathways of the water that I envisaged and wanted to be brought out into music, and she's created this masterpiece, really, this wonderful piece of music, Inception Horizon, that you heard us perform down in the cave.
So when Lawrence came to me with this idea, we just decided to run with it. Like, a big part of what we were trying to do in ICRAG is to make science part of culture. And more often than not, if you pitch something as a science event, you will get a smaller crowd than if you pitch it as a cultural event, be that music or art or performance. And when you have someone as talented as Lawrence, who believes in his research as much as he does, who's the driving force behind this, I just kind of had to essentially just enable Lawrence and Nora to explore this as far as they could. And that meant everything from turning it into a short film to bringing the Mellotonics all the way to perform in a cave in Slovenia. I remember the time that Nora came to me and she said, we need more tenors, we have to find tenors from somewhere, and we did, and we flew them all the way over to Slovenia, and it was amazing that 5 years after this has started, we still have this cultural output that has come from a science research centre. And I know from talking to colleagues internationally that a huge amount of the public engagement with science work that we do here in Ireland is the envy of other countries, because our funder give us carte blanche to do what we want. And if we decide that the best way to reach people is through music, we have the power and we have the ability and the creativity to do that. And I think that's worth mentioning and worth calling out.
So I should say as well, I never heard the piece of music, but I've heard Fergus talk to an international group about the piece of music. And because I'm from here, I was able to go, of course you can replicate how water moves on the burn. I know what that sounds like. I know what it feels like. I know at times of heavy rain and less rain and that there's a delayed response when you feel and see the water. So I had that embodied knowledge of what it could mean. But the thing about Science Week that's so important is so many people don't have access to that type of understanding and the type of embodiment. And to Fergus's point about how we take events like this and multiply them and make them easier for other people who might not be able to get access to a full cave or access to Clare. And the reason we did it in Clare, by the way, is Clare is one of the lowest rates of science engagement in the country, so we wanted to make sure we brought science directly to the place that it was made and inspired by. And I think that thing about embodied understanding and feeling understanding is one that's so interesting in how your piece came about, in that it wasn't a response to the science, it was a response to another cultural event about the science, which was quite interesting. It was the film that had been the source of kind of inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. So the piece that you heard tonight is kind of the third section of a film that I made with a colleague at UCC, Dan O'Connell. And I guess the film is our response to place. And I guess my lens into climate intervention, I guess, because as a traditional musician, I've been fascinated by the connection between music and place for a long time. And when I thought about it, it was quite a natural way in for me to see place as something that, yes, we can celebrate it, but we also should lament its imminent destruction. So that's where, I guess that's where I found that resonance for me and my work. So the piece that you heard tonight is kind of the third section of a film called Visioning. And it was commissioned by Berndio. It was premiered about a year ago, the last Wintridge 2024. And I guess that's what it was. It was also very much connected to the Hare's Corner, because I think I'm a bit fascinated with the Hare's Corner, both on a practical level where it's getting us to maybe reappraise what may have been deemed as something that wasn't functional, but actually is a place of transformation in terms of biodiversity, but also I guess the more metaphorical value of the Hare's Corner as that connection to the other world, where I guess metaphorically all kinds of transformation and creativity can happen as well. So the piece you heard tonight mightn't have given you the full picture as to what the film is about, but that's an excerpt from it. So that's how it was composed, I guess. Within the piece, things start off recognizable. That's meant to kind of reflect the familiarity of what's around us. Then it gets a little bit murky and mysterious and even sinister, and that's meant to reflect that kind of disruption, that liminal state where things can kind of get a little bit I guess transformational, and then hopefully bring us to kind of a post-liminal state where we feel like doing something about it.
Great. So the third piece of music had a lot of lament in it, we'll say. Do you want to tell us? So I also don't know if anyone else feels like this when they read academic papers, but the cacophony of noise at one point felt a bit similar of, these are words that I should understand the context of, but I don't always understand it, but I have all these feelings about the thing, and it's written in such a... And I started to feel like that while hearing the piece, which I don't know if Yvonne intended as the writer of the piece, or if John intended it as the composer of the piece, but it was definitely one. But I know for you guys it was a chat, you were concerned with that sorry. Do you want to tell the audience about the data set that you gave to John? Which, by the way, I always said, Yvonne, please give John a data set, and that was pretty much all we did. Which wasn't the way these collaborations often happen. Usually there needs to be a lot more bridge building, but these two were well able, so they didn't need it. But you were concerned about the set in particular.
About the set?
The data set.
Oh, the data set, yes, yeah. So just to give you a bit of context around the data set, it's from not very far away from here, Slieve Carron, and it's above ground, so it's the grasslands of Slieve Carron, which are very, very species rich. So in that particular site, there's 85 different species, which the choir did a great job of singing and bringing together in music. And the experiment that we did there was adding nutrients to plots and also fencing plots, and you heard about that in the piece of music as well. And what adding nutrients does, it's like an agricultural intensification, so that's the intensification part of the piece. And fencing plots is like an agricultural abandonment of traditional grazing. So it's you have fenced plots, and that's the abandonment side of the piece. And we were interested in the how diversity, so the number of species, the arrangements of the numbers of individuals within those species, how that diversity responds to the intensification part and the abandonment part. And the other thing that I think is really important to know about this particular experiment is that while this version of it is in the Burren and it ran for 6 years here, it's part of a network of 128 sites worldwide, all doing the same experiment. And what I loved about John's piece was that it centered the scientific method and the people who do the research in the music piece. So right at the start of the piece, there was all of these people pointing at stuff and calling out little short names. And that was something we chatted about. He asked me, like, what does it feel like in the field? What does it look like in the field? And I described, me and my students kind of all going, ooh, pla lan, and, room ass, and car pan, and hall lan. And those are like the little tiny short tags that we give to the species as we spot them. And that was incorporated into the piece. So this site in the Burren is part of a much, much wider worldwide network. And within each of those 128 sites, there's probably 5, 10, 15 people all going, look at that species, look at that species, look at that species, look at that species. So it centered that humanness of science within the piece, which I really, really loved. So I might pass on to John.
Yeah, so in Hive Choir, we do a lot of these projects where we respond to science, and each year for the last number of years we've done a concert every year for Northern Ireland Science Festival where we take a different topic and really delve into it through song. And me and Anne met earlier this year where I was talking about at a conference, one of our projects about how we sing.
We don't spend all of our time at conferences, just to be clear.
Most. So we had actually just done a project where we were singing about people who go through genetic testing. And I was telling Anne and a bunch of other science communicators about how we turn things into music. And so then she got back to me a couple of weeks later and said, do you want to turn this research project into music? And I really didn't quite understand what the study was about at first until we had a good chat and you talked to me about that sort of human side of the research. So I guess just like looking at the score, like maybe you heard in the piece, we're singing and giving voice to all those different species. We're doing things like data sonification, like taking some of the graphs that are in the academic paper and turning those into notes. In some places we were taking specific data points and then turning those into like chords. So that's some of the things we do as a choir, is like turning research into sound. But actually for me what's really important often is trying to give this sort of like polyvocality to like represent what's happening in the paper through the voice. So when you hear us like each reading different bits, that's all improvised. So each member of the choir is like actively selecting little bits of the text that appeal to them. And when we're singing out phrases or species, different members of the choir are singing their own improvised melody. So there's like a collective improvisation and writing constantly through what we do, which I don't know, for me it's like really important in this sense of giving voice to something, and hopefully that communicates to the audience like somehow actively through doing that.
Can I add one more thing? The other thing that struck me was this idea of diversity declining as you intensify or you abandon, and through one of the features of the data set worldwide, including in the Burren, is that as you intensify or abandon, the number of species in this case went from around 30 species per metre squared all the way down to 5 species per metre squared in just 3 or 4 years. So it was lovely and quite affecting, haunting to hear that through the flattening or the deadening of the music as it went on, so that there was just a few notes left at the end. And I think that's quite a really effective way of trying to communicate what biodiversity is and what the loss of biodiversity means. It's a flattening, a deadening of the landscape around us and the services and contributions that nature makes to us. So I thought that was really lovely, well communicated through the music. Not lovely, but it was well communicated.
I should say as well, this is the first time Yvonne and I have heard the piece. So
Yeah,
we're like,
yeah.
oh, okay. At this point, I want to ask if there's any questions from the audience. I can't see around the corner very well, so if there's hands up down the back, somebody else let me know. Lads, come on. Any questions? I'll let you think for another moment or two. Yeah, go ahead.
You personified each of the groups in the study, control group, phosphate, and they were singing different things. I was really trying to make out what was happening there. So was the control group keeping a diversity, and then some of the other nutrient-rich groups were using less tonal variation as it went on?
Yeah, so that part was the hardest part actually to prepare, because usually, like I said, we're improvising a lot of melody, and in this case we actually wanted to kind of get it right and accurately present through pitch and tonality what was happening in the graph. So that was actually figure 1. If I go back to the score, that was figure 1, which was the median species numbers over the 5 years of the study. And so control, which was Sarah.
Service control.
So Sarah's note did change because the control data did bubble, you know. So I don't, you know, that's you
normal,
could talk later. That's normal, like the noise of control data, I guess. So we had mapped the different lines on the axis of the graph to different pitches, almost like a musical stave, and then the years were the different chords over time. And you could hear mine, which was, I was actually going lowest, so I was the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and fence. So I was the intensification and the abandonment, and mine was getting really, really low. And like Catherine, what were you? The phosphorus, you were getting quite low too. That was bottom of your range, and Adam was the fence, and that was getting low. So we were playing with the ranges of the voices and sort of trying to fit that into almost like you'd say like a traditional choral setting, but it was just reacting to the raw data.
Yep.
When you were preparing the piece and you were listing out all the species, I'm just interested, did the choir members look online or look at the photographs of the particular species to see, you know, should you sing particular species in a particular way to reflect what you felt when you looked at the plant?
So there were a couple of instances where we did, because we were just like, what the hell is that? Because some of these names of species, well, actually a lot of them are used in, you know, traditional medicine and things. So a lot of the common names you would come across. Some of them we were actually, the Latin names we were finding really hard, like how do we actually pronounce these? But the team were great. They gave us the Latin names, common names, and Irish names. So some of us were singing bits in Irish. I was too scared to, because my Silver Fáinne and Donegal Irish, I thought wouldn't cut it here. But yeah, we did Google some, especially when we ended on these repeated, what was the last one? Yeah, the Holcus lanatus. Did I say that right?
It's your Donegal accent, yeah. Donegal Latin.
When we sort of honed in on 3 species, because that was the final graph in the paper, which was which species were left on the most extreme abandonment and intensification, and there were 3 like grasses, basic. So we did Google those to see what they looked like, because we were like, they're kind of the evil plants that are taking over and getting rid of all the other plants. Not to like personalize the plants, but yeah. So we did Google some of them to find out, and also Anne was able to source some lovely illustrations for the
And
card.
Yvonne.
And Yvonne,
And Alison. Yeah. I think that's actually an interesting question for Inception Horizon as well. Having gone through 5 years of it, do you think people visualize a karst landscape deeper in a different way, having heard it? Or even the choir? Could be a question for the choir who all still here.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, so when we did the first performance, it was in Trinity College. It was the day before the country shut down, actually, for COVID. So we had this event where we had a series of different people speaking about karst landscapes, and we had a sculptor had created a work of art as well, and then the culmination was us singing the piece. And I know, Fergus, you interviewed a lot of people, members of the public who came, and some of the comments, I mean, they definitely said, their perception of just water under the ground and how it all links up together, and had vastly increased. And and some of them were saying that they wanted to come across to the Burren now, to visit some of the cave systems.
Yeah, like we always try and get a sense of like what has happened to an audience when they encounter a piece. Sometimes it can be slightly trickier when it's a cultural piece and a piece of performance. So I think for Inception Horizon, I did do an evaluation with the choir members themselves, and one particular one jumps out to me where the choir, a few members of the choir said that, because I had asked them, did being involved in this project affect like your process as a singer? And I remember them saying how they had to kind of like, maybe it was adjust their pitch or their volume when they were singing in a cave, because the air is a lot more moist, I guess, and that affects how the sound is being generated in your throat. So they I guess actively had to consider their surroundings as they were singing, and it was really lovely for me then, because their surroundings were what they were actually singing about, and the two were kind of feeding off each other.
Yeah, and I do want to say again, thank you to all the musicians and performers, because nobody knew what they were doing until they got here today, because most people haven't been to the caves or been in the caves or knew what they were doing or knew what the lights or the sound or the waterfall was going to be like. So it wasn't just the researchers who I think were uncomfortable in a new way of working. The musicians also had a new way of working that they maybe hadn't done in a while or before. On the notes of surveys and other lovely illustrations of plants, unless there's any other questions from the audience at this point? No? Okay, so when you came in, you should have all been given a little card. May I encourage you please to all pull out said little card. If you didn't get a card, raise your hand and the guys will drop you one up. Yeah? Great. So that QR code, shameless plug now, but the QR code on the card will lead you to an evaluation survey. Woo! But in the meantime, John is going to get us to sing us out. We'll do a quick close and thank you at the end, but you're all now going to be part of a science experiment and participative experiment.
Yes, you didn't get them to sign anything on the way in, did they? You're now all official members of Hive Choir, everybody, so thank you so much for coming along tonight to join our choir. Do you all have your card? Do you all got your species? I've actually got, I've got loads here. We've got bracken, blackberry. Oh, I'll not spoil them all. So maybe what I could do, we'll just do a quick warm-up. Can we all do the sound of, which goes down, the stalactites? Can we all do a nice like falling tone of the stalactite? And can we do the mite? Can we do the stalagmite? Great. Can we now all do both at once somehow? Let's hear what that sounds like. Like a cave. Yeah. Yeah, a bit louder, a bit louder. Okay, a bit of chaos. It's going to get more chaotic in a little second. So I want you all to read your species. Maybe common name first, because that's probably easiest to pronounce at first. And when I give the, this is, has anyone been in a choir before? This is the signal to do something. So when I do that, you're all going to just shout out your species name together. You ready? I can't hear you. They sound very good. Okay, that's a start, but we're a choir here, so can we try to sing it together? Can we try to sing it together? As you maybe didn't noticed Hive earlier, we were quite intricate in doing syllable by syllable. I'll just give a nice slow hand here, and you're going to sing in your own time, just your species to a nice tone. Yeah, can we do a nice tone? If you can't do a nice tone, it can be a not nice tone. It's okay. It's species diversity. Let's try that. Let's just sing it nice, and you can go as long as you want, as long as you can breathe. Okay, I like that. Maybe could I hear, like, because all the choir are actually down the back. Can I just hear the choir down the back? Amazing! Wow. And then the audience at the front. Can we hear you guys? Did you hear what they did? You can do better. You ready? Amazing. And now just the speakers.
One modern time.
Amazing. Whoa. Okay. So to finish off, close your eyes. We're all going to imagine we're coming out of the cave. We're taking a walk out onto the burren, and we've got our little pencil and paper. We're doing our study of the diversity. Okay. So we are the team of researchers with Yvonne. Yvonne's leading the way. And when you're ready, I'm going to allow you to discover your species. And when you discover your species, you're just going to sing it out loud and proud. Okay? So I'm actually going to keep your eyes closed, and I'm going to say 3, 2, 1. And when I say 3, 2, 1, that's the start of the piece of music. The music is going to start. I trust you. And then you just sing whenever you're ready, when you discover your species. And after you sing, you can open your eyes. 3, 2, 1. Oh, I didn't do mine. Bracken. That's it. Thank you so much, everybody. Well done.
So thank you very much. You've now all become science engagement. Congratulations. We're closing up now, so it's just my turn to say thanks to absolutely everybody, and it's a really long list. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Research Ireland for funding the event. I want to say thank you to the iCrowd team. So Lucy and Phoebe, who are down the back. Lucy has played a binder, coordinated a very big group to start with. I want to thank especially the Alba Caves team, because I think tonight would not have been possible at all without the Alba Caves. I'm going to call them out as well. Anya, Emmett, Mikey and Nuala in particular. I want to thank my own co-centre team, so Emma and Alison, Yvonne and Caroline, some of her team, and our wider ops team who were great and very helpful. And lastly, because they are clearly the most important, I want to thank Mellotonics, first of all. Big hand for them. I want to thank Jack Talty, Katrina Barker, Fanula Fahy, Kitty Sabry, Florian Blanche, Sean Eustace, Paul O'Driscoll, and Jack again. I'll second again on the list, but yeah. And lastly, to thank Hive Choir. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you stand for the entire time. It will be.